Dude, it says here, the Fermi paradox indicates that if intelligent aliens existed, they would be all over the place by now. They'd be here on Earth. It says it would be inevitable. They colonize the whole galaxy in just a few million years. Can you believe that?
We see UFOs like every day, There's reports all the time.
UFOs?
Yeah.
Dude, that's impossible. Aliens couldn't get here. It would take them billions of years.
Annoyed grunt.
Okay, guys. What's up? Welcome to Splayed. We are talking about aliens again because it's become, we'll call it a passion of mine of late. Mm-hmm. Yeah, ever since I discovered they were real, I was like, shit. And I've been talking about them ever since. So, aliens, Adam, Nazca Mummies. We're going to talk about the Nazca Mummies today, guys. Welcome to Splayed, because I might cut in here.
Maybe.
We're going to talk about the Nazca Mummies. The Nazca alien mummies.
The mummified remains.
The mummified remains of aliens.
Mm-hmm. And their
little 3 phalanges.
Why are they so small? Did they shrink?
Well, I mean, they probably shrink a little bit, right? But no, I think that they are, roughly the height and size that they are. What's interesting to me, guys, is the brain capacity relative to the rest of the size of the body. Mm-hmm. So, like, brains matter in terms of their proportional size to the body. Like, a whale has a big brain.
Yeah.
But they also have to control this massive body, mm-hmm. right? So a lot of the neurons are devoted to maintaining that massive structure, right? But, whales are smart still. But the point is that you can have a smaller brain, and if the proportionate size, the relative size of that brain to the rest of the body is high, then you may have significant cognitive capability. Yeah. Even though these things are like, how big are they?
They were just like the size
they're
of...
so little.
Tiny, yeah.
Yeah, they're little ones.
And I was asking earlier, are you more afraid or less afraid? Right?
I think it's more afraid. It's terrifying.
Because, we fight things about that size. We know of things about that size, right? Spider monkeys.
You ever fight a spider monkey?
With a knife? They'll still. You've seen those videos where they're like, oh, look, a monkey, and the monkey just comes up and like grabs whatever he wants and then looks at you and is like, yeah, this is mine now.
What you gonna do about it?
Yeah. My territory.
So these mummies, there's been a lot of like a wave of comments that are like, it's a hoax, mm-hmm. right? Obviously they've been out since 2017 and they were debunked. Right? And I want to be very clear about debunking. Debunking does not mean disproven. Okay? Debunking does not mean disproven. Debunking simply means they offered an alternative explanation. That's all that a debunk is, right? Because aliens you're not allowed to believe in, right? Until one comes up and slaps you in the face. We talked about that, right?
Yeah.
With aliens, you're not allowed to accumulate evidence because each individual evidence has to prove aliens entirely on its own. Otherwise, you have to rule it out as not alien, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a result, the needle, the evidence needle can't go up above 0 until you have one piece of evidence that's 100% conclusive, right? Yeah. That's not true in anything else in nature, right? You're allowed to accumulate evidence, right? In a court of law, you're allowed to accumulate evidence, right? But with aliens... If you don't see 100% of the alien, right? Up front, then it counts as 0 evidence, right?
So it's like a really bad auto dealership. If you have, enough money to pay off the car and you're ready to sign, everything's good. And then when you do pay that money and then you go get your car, the car doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, because it was a multi-step process, right? Yeah, if it didn't happen all at once, you don't get the car, right? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure I love the analogy, but it works.
It kind of works.
It works. The point is that, you're not allowed to accumulate evidence. You're not allowed to make a case, right? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to rule out any evidence that doesn't stand on its own entirely. So, where was I going with that? Aliens, mummies, hoaxes, debunks. We're talking about debunks, okay? So debunks, all they have to do is offer another explanation, and then you're supposed to rule out the alien as a possible thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that means the next time you see an alien even if it's 95, 96, 99% confident, if it's not 100% confident, you're supposed to rule it out, right? And because you ruled out the prior case, the two cases can't combine together to make a stronger case. So that one's also 0, right? The Nazca Mummies were debunked in 2017, not disproven. All that happened is people offered speculative evidence as to what alternative case may be. So, for example, they said that the skull could be a llama skull, right? Except for that there was one site that indicated that the skull had human DNA. So their argument was that it was human. And there was another site that argued that it could be a llama skull. So which is it? You know what I mean?
Well, that's just the two arguments going against each other, though, right?
Yeah, they're two debunks. And neither of them obviously have done a full study because the two are not compatible, right?
No.
It's either a human skull or it's a llama skull. By the way, this is not a llama skull. You can tell because llamas have jaws. And in fact, if you look at the llama skull, like 60% of the skull is the jaw structure, right? These do not have jaws that can chew. They can't chew.
Yeah.
They can't chew. So this jaw is, if it's a hoax, the jaw is entirely synthetic. It does not offer, it doesn't match anything that we have, right? In terms of like mammals that chew, right? Or reptiles or anything else that chews.
Well, reptiles, birds, they don't really chew, they just swallow, you know?
Yeah, fair.
So, I mean, it's just how things evolved, right?
Point is that it's not a llama or a human. You know what I mean?
You're just saying not a llama or
a human, right? Of the two debunks that have been offered. And the thing is, you're supposed to like say, oh, well, probably a llama and write it off, right? It's not a llama. And then they started saying that, okay, they've pieced together bones of various animals, right?
A chimera.
And there's like a video that like where he like Photoshop like flips the bones and he's like, look, these are upside down or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's all speculative. Like he's saying this looks like it could be inverted, right? Something like that.
Oh, speaking of chimeras, like you said before, the whale is so big that they're like in Pacific Rim, the big monsters needed 2 brains to operate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So because of the size, you need to split the brain up.
Yeah.
But in this case, smaller, you know, you can keep it all in one.
Although supposedly these have like 4 lobes. That's unrelated to the Nazca Mummies. That's just UFOlogy lore, right? Is that the Greys have 4 lobes to their brain.
Yeah, think about it. That smaller package, right? Because they are so small that they don't need to physically altercate you. They can move you around. You know? Yeah. Telekinetic, maybe?
Well, that's the thing, is a lot of people are saying that these things don't have knees. Like, they can't walk. You know what I mean?
So they float. Oh, that'd be scary, right?
Well, supposedly the ones in Peru are floating. That's why they call them jetpack miners. Because they're floating in the air.
I like those. I like those guys.
So think about it. Like, yeah, if all you need the legs for is to stand, right? And you don't actually need them for locomotion, and you're like an optimized creature, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe you don't have, you've lost the ability to or it's been genetically engineered away from you, but you don't have the ability to like run because you don't need to. You're just hovering everywhere you go.
That's what I'm saying. Imagine them just floating around, and if they, sense you or do anything, they just pick you up and like warp you out. Yeah. That's it. That's their weapon.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't need to be like brutish. You know what I mean? Because they can just laser you. You know.
Because I don't know about the whole Halo brute, where the, what were they called?
The brutes?
Well, there's the brutes. They were enslaved by, I forget who they were.
The Covenant?
The Covenant, yes.
Yeah.
So the Covenant enslaved the brutes to do their grunt work.
Right.
But what if they're just, like, we don't need them? We'll just fly around, taking out your missiles.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
If they colonize, that'd be, the end of us. They just fly in, put a parking lot.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they want to take over, they can take over, right? So it's weird what they're doing. They're attacking people in Peru, and I hate this, by the way. My heart goes out to the people of Peru, right? It's like we can't even muster Congress to go out there and help them because Congress isn't allowed to admit that what's happening out there is happening. You know what I mean?
Oh, did you hear about Russian miners? There's another story about miners.
Talk to me about Russian miners for a second.
So
but real quick, I just want to slip in. There's a Russian recovered alien that looks a lot like the Nazca Mummy aliens, right? And it's also been debunked, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean disproven, right? And I think that it's interesting how close it looks to the other ones, right? When you start seeing all these hoaxes where these people weren't in communication, right? Presumably, or unlikely.
Right.
And they all are producing similar looking patterns, right? I find that interesting. Continue, Russia.
Okay, so there was a video of the Russian miners revolting against, the army.
Okay.
And they're like, so they're on like ATVs and they block the path, and you see the Russian soldiers come up on horseback and they're trying to, fire at each other. Nothing's really happening. And then the police come in and they kind of like push their way up the hill. But they're like saying, in the video clip I saw, someone was like saying they have, jetpacks. They got jetpacks. They're flying around. They're shooting at us. But the miners are like, we don't have that. You hear them like yell over, we don't have this.
We don't have jetpacks. There's so many problems with that jetpack story. It's just so BS. I mean, first of all, they'd be loud as hell. They only have it's like 30 to 40 minutes of flight time, so they're not going to be running around all night in those things. You know what I mean? And they're heavy. Like, you're gonna have to lug them up there. You know what I mean? Or wherever they're at. Like, it's so, they're not using jetpacks in full body armor. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not. So it's just ludicrous. But we don't have jetpacks.
Yeah, the one officer is like, they're using sophisticated technology of jetpacks, and they're miner over there. We don't have them. But yeah, it's like the Russian propaganda is like trying to say, oh, they're revolting. They have more advanced weapons because of the West or something. But it's like, no, we don't.
No, we're just miners.
We need to get paid.
We're just looking for someone. We don't have money for jetpacks. So they've been debunked. Again, I say BS, especially in light of the most recent evidence, which is that they've brought forward DNA evidence. And I want to talk about the DNA evidence because it's not conclusive, right? But it's weird. Okay, so we'll talk about the DNA evidence a little bit. I went through it as much as I could at my level, right? Which is I just pulled up the DNA, and they actually have some really cool tools where you can filter out various trees,
Yeah.
See how many reads they've done, and you can compare it to other human genomes, right? And kind of get a baseline for where this is at. There's a significant amount of human DNA. Like, so arguably you could classify them as human, right? Based off the DNA alone. The problem is you have a bunch of misreads or unknown reads, and that can be interpreted two ways. You can interpret that as just it was bad DNA, rubbish, we couldn't read it, which is likely. But it could be like sequences that we haven't seen before, and they couldn't be categorized, right? There was DNA that I ruled out as junk DNA because there was a lot of bovine DNA and a lot of rat DNA, so I assume that's contamination. But there is some indication in UFO lore, right, that they may actually have incorporated bovine DNA into their genome. There was a LARP post. We think it's a LARP post. There was a post on Reddit about a guy saying that in 2010 he worked on these projects, right? And there's some things that he says that is inconsistent. Like, he says they have 4 fingers, right? But there's other things that he says that are interesting. Like, he says that they have non-reciprocating breathing, right? So they don't like breathe in and out. They have like a unidirectional breathing system. He says, like birds.
Okay.
And one of the debunk arguments against the Nazca Mummies is that they don't have flexible rib cages, and so they wouldn't be able to like breathe the way that we do.
Again, we don't know if the atmosphere would be amenable to them, right? So
right, yeah. Well, and there's another thing that says that they only can survive for like, I don't know, in our atmosphere for like a short amount of time. That's separate. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to talk about the DNA. So what's interesting though is he did mention that they respond to bovine growth serum, something like
hormones?
that. That they have like strong reactions to that in terms of culturing the cells or something. So they may have actually incorporated receptors for those hormones, right? And of course that ties in probably to cattle mutilations and stuff like that, sucking the blood from the cattle, right?
Yeah.
What is that all about?
I mean, a lot of the cattle mutilations and livestock mutilations that they're trying to get either the stuff that they want. Maybe it's their drug. We don't know, right?
Yeah. I don't know that that's what they're after. I'd imagine they can synthesize whatever they need, you know what I mean? But maybe they occasionally need to get an updated sample, or they need to I don't know.
I don't know. It's like if they're really just using us for like one resource, but it's not enough. then what, right?
Yeah. I rule that out, the DNA evidence for bovine, as contaminant, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it may not be, right? But interesting, there's a lot of human DNA in there. Now, what I found interesting, and by the way, I was going to talk about DNA later, but we're just going full into DNA. If you rule out everything else, though, the percentages are pretty similar to us. There did look like they have a little bit more of like gorilla and pan DNA and hominine DNA, right, than humans do. But it was in, like, if you looked at a whole bunch of human genomes on their site, it was in the range, like there were some that were close to that, within a few percentage points, right? And it's hard to get a read for exactly how accurate this is, because as I understand it, they're just randomly reading different segments of the DNA, right, and trying to find matches. Mm-hmm. And so basically, if you think about the percentage of your genome that is like gorilla DNA or pan DNA, or like, you know what I mean, human, or, you know, higher orders, right? If you're just randomly reading, the way that works is that once you've done enough readings, the percentage of genomes that you find in each of those classifications should get closer and closer to what is actually relevant in your DNA, right? But it can be off a little bit, right? Because you're just randomly selecting. So you could, if you don't have a lot of good, entropy in your reads, you could, be favoring one area of the genome a little bit, right? And as a result, you could get a higher signal from that area than you normally, than that is actually representative in the underlying organism.
Yeah.
So
I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah.
That you're like wanting to look at the whole DNA.
Yeah, like for example, like if I want to say how many times does the word balloon occur in this book, right? Mm-hmm. Or what percentage of words in this book are the word balloon, right? Now, if I read the whole book, I may find that there are 5 words, right? Or 5 times the word balloon is mentioned, right? But if I'm just randomly reading words from the book, and I happen to always read this one page more than the other pages, and that page happens to be the page that has balloon on it twice, right? Mm-hmm. Then I may read the word balloon 60 times, right? And I may think that there's a much higher percentage of the word balloon in that book than there really is, right? Because mm-hmm. I'm just reading randomly, and I overread certain pages, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, that you just like look at the whole sequence and not just keep looking at the same thing over and over.
Yeah. So if you don't have enough entropy, if your reads aren't distributed evenly enough across the genome, then you could end up overreading certain areas and over amplifying the signal of that area.
Again, they said some of it came back as just registered, right?
Yeah,
Again,
and so that's what's interesting is that all it takes. The difference between us and apes, as I understand it, is roughly around like 1.2%, right? We're like 1.2% different from apes, mm-hmm. right? So obviously 1% of DNA difference can make dramatic differences in form and intellect, right?
Yeah.
Dramatic differences. So even if they're only 1% difference from us, then they could be, the data is inconclusive. They could be anywhere, from what I could see, comparing it to other humans, they could be anywhere from like 3 to like 15% different from humans. And that's when you rule out the contaminants, right? Mm-hmm. So if you rule out things like the bovine and the rat and the other stuff like that, or the undefined reads, ruling all of that out, there still seem to be around 5 to 10 to 15% off from the other human samples that I looked at, right? They're still in the range of where like it could just be human, right? But there was a little bit of a difference. There was a little bit more pan gorilla, right? Type mm-hmm. DNA, a little bit more hominine or whatever, hominine. So it was interesting, because also the fact that they had more of that, to me, indicates that maybe they're an earlier fork, mm-hmm. right? So I'm thinking not extraterrestrial unless they've intentionally incorporated local DNA.
Yeah, into themselves.
Probably ancient humans, like pre-human, right?
Yeah. So, speaking of the DNA real fast, a little bit of a spoiler for the Venture Brothers, if you want to hear it or not. It's funny as hell. So, the Monarch is just a clone of Rusty Venture. and they're like, "Oh my God, they're brothers. Their DNA's the same." He's like, "You guys think they're brothers? They're the same person. He's just got 10% more ape, in him." He's like, "I told Jonas not to put that crap in him, but he was like, no, I got it." Made him more aggressive,
Yeah.
So he became a supervillain, the Monarch. They're the same person.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just 10% more gorilla.
Exactly.
It cured his baldness.
Yeah. That's awesome.
He's like, "I can't believe we're just clones."
It's exactly that. That's exactly that.
Yeah. It's just 10%. Just 10% gorilla. That's all it takes.
Just a dash of gorilla.
And they they got beautiful hair.
Yeah.
Little tiny thing with like a mullet.
Yeah. A gorilla with a mullet would be good. I think that we need to. Yeah. That's something that I take it back. I regret saying that. Okay, so another way to look at it, though, by the way, you could look at it because the one thing that what I seemed to get at first was they actually had more Homo sapien DNA than we do, higher percentage, right? But again, that can happen if they're overreading a certain portion of the genome. But I thought that was interesting.
That they have
more genes that we indicate as being Homo sapien than we do. And again, it's possible that's just due to how the reading was done, right? But could it be there has been, again, if you look at UFO, which I don't like to draw on this too much because you're starting to draw from an area that's really uncertain, right? But if you look at UFOlogy and UFO lore, there's a lot of talk about our DNA having been modified in the past.
Yeah.
So someone even said like 65 times. I'm trying to remember where I heard that, but someone said that our genome has been modified like 65 times throughout history. I don't remember where I heard it, but if I remember where I heard it,
you picked it up from somewhere.
Yeah, I will try and include the link. But I find that's interesting. Is the DNA that makes us so much smarter, right? Was that infused? You know what I mean? Did they share their DNA with us, and that's why there's so much overlap?
That goes back to that movie, the Aliens one. What was it called? Prometheus. Remember?
Right.
Where he drinks the goo thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think to be clear, I think there's a lot of inspiration in that from
Well, H.R. Geiger. He's the guy who designed the alien.
Okay.
So he's like, I wanted to look somewhat mechanical, but like not, and more like. The way he put it is like, I wanted to look like the genitals of a... Yeah.
I mean, he was a very sexual person.
He was. He's German.
It was all latex and robots, I don't know. What I understand is they found him, right? Like they were looking, I don't remember how. Who's the director of Alien? It's Ridley Scott. Right?
Ridley Scott directed the first one, and then they had, what's his name from Titanic, do that.
Oh, the guy who did...
James Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Swimming in money.
Yeah.
Every time you say James Cameron, just a gif of him.
It's always like, I always have to wonder, like, is he manipulating the industry? How do his movies always make the most money? Like, what is he doing?
Didn't he do E.T.?
Like, his movies are good, but they're not like... No, Steven Spielberg did E.T.
Spielberg.
And I'm reading this book by... I don't know, it's about encounter level. He talks about encounter levels. It's by Alan Hynek and Paul Hynek, I think, authored the book. Anyway, Alan Hynek, J. Alan Hynek, or just Alan Hynek, I don't know. He consulted on E.T. And he worked for Blue Book. So he was out scouting the country, taking in UFO sightings. And I find it interesting that he consulted Steven Spielberg on E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Maybe just one of them, and then his guidance was used on both. I don't know. And I think it's definitely E.T. I think it's very interesting then that the Nazca Mummies have that sort of really clearly defined brow ridge that you see on the E.T. alien. Yeah. Right? I think that's very interesting.
I find it interesting that he has access, Steven Spielberg actually did a lot of the research. I mean, even when he did Titanic, he was on more deep sea submersible dives than anyone else.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, he goes to
he gets the real information. Yeah. The full tilt.
He went full John Hammond. That's a good one.
Yeah, full John Hammond.
Spared no expense.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Jurassic Park. Didn't he do Jurassic Park?
He did. What would aliens?
Do you know what sucks about aliens?
Yeah.
once you know that they're real, you don't know where the new boundary for reality is, right? I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I need to know, okay, so now that this is real, where's the new, because like, I can't sleep at night. You know what I mean? Like, I need to understand.
That's why they don't want to tell. That's the thing. You know, they're like, we don't need you, you know, knowing the new boundary.
Yeah.
This can happen, this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to like lay it out for me. You know what I mean? Like, can they walk through walls? Because the UFO lore says they can.
Well, that's lore again.
Right?
Right? But you want
I
actually...
need to know, is that actually... I know they're here. The problem is I don't know what all the other bullshit is bullshit and what's real anymore. Because once you know they're here, that you know a certain amount we've been lied to, right?
Yeah.
So if they're here, that implies a whole lot of stuff. It means that, like, probably anti-gravity, right? It means that probably warp drives or something similar, right? It means, like, probably a lot of quantum phenomena, right, is legit. So there's other things in the lore that say, like, they can fucking move through walls, right? Well, that's fucking scary. You know what I mean? So what's real? You got to tell me. You got to tell me what the limits are, right?
I say, you know, I'm like, hey, as soon as, if it comes out on the news, right, and they're just like, hey, we got this, and this.
I guess what I'm saying is people are suffering, right?
Yeah, but it's...
I feel like we could potentially save these people, you know what I mean, if we were allowed to talk about this. So, like, find the humanity in yourself and let's find a way to get this information out. You know what I mean? That's a plea. That's like a please. You know?
Yeah. To me, it's like, you know, if alien debriefing and everything comes out and they're like, you know, do I need to be worried at this point in time? Are they preparing anything? It's like in the Men in Black, right? Where he goes, we'll keep going. No, it was in Avengers when Nick Fury goes, you know, we'll keep moving until such time as the world does stop moving. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
That's all we can do.
Right. I would like to help.
You want to help.
Yeah.
But even then,
America together, we can all we can build laser guns, you know? Like, we should be building a lot more shit than we probably are, and we can't devote the resources to it because it's being withheld. Think about that. Those who think that we're doing this for the greater good, how, like, we probably need weapons that would level us up to their game, right? And I'm imagining that we're building some of them, right? But we could probably build a lot more of them. You know what I mean?
We could build a lot more, but what if that the technology gets into the wrong hands and all that? But it's like,
well, you mean, how are you going to be worried about, like, China?
Well, not even
when
China.
When you've got NHIs that are, like, on your back doorstep that are 10 times what China has, or what we have. You know what I mean?
I just think, like,
it's already in the wrong hands. Like, you know what I mean?
No, I'm not saying like national hands. I'm like your next door neighbor hands, kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
supervillain, you know.
Yeah. That is a concern.
Dave down the street built himself a new volcano lair.
Yeah. But the thing is that that doesn't mean they can't tell us. Again, I'm all for national security. That doesn't mean they can't tell us, like, okay, but here's what you need to do to protect yourself, right? Like, don't drive around on a farm in the middle of the night. If you see a blue light, you need to get the fuck out of there. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I don't know. Shit like that.
Just, I guess the rules, I mean, you kind of have your own guideline that you can make up on your own, right? You know?
Well, no, I mean, you can't, because you don't know what the limits are, you know?
Even fighting the unknown, you know, you don't even know if it works or not. You don't have any definitive proof about that, right?
Wait, what works?
That anything works against, like, you know, ghosts, aliens, anything really, you know?
Yeah, but I think the government does know.
Well, maybe they have
and that's
something.
The problem.
Well,
so,
like you said, there's stuff that's in your control. You know what to do. You're doing everything you can. But I know you're getting fed new information about, like, hey, this, and this. And you're like,
yeah, they leak out information that lets you know that X, Y, and Z are real. Yeah. But then they don't let you have the information about what the fuck you can do about it. You know what I mean?
Because they're like, well, that's all we're going to get.
They protect themselves.
Again, it could be fear.
And maybe they protect us a little bit, but I still feel like I should, you know, as an American, you should understand
as a father,
right? That I shouldn't. No American should feel right about the government being the only layer of protection that they have, right?
Yeah.
As a fucking American, you should understand that. You know what I mean? That you have a right to be able to protect yourself.
Yeah.
To harden yourself. You know what I mean?
So I'm just saying.
So to rob us of that is to deny what being American is.
Yeah.
You know?
How you feel about the House of the Rising Sun?
What's that?
You know that song?
Oh, yeah.
There is a house.
What about that song?
Yeah, my mother-in-law hates it.
Oh, yeah. Does it mean so? I mean, it sounds interesting. I heard it, though. I heard about it from you guys, I think. But, yeah, I don't know much about it.
Yeah, it's just, I guess the song is like, he has to go back to like New Orleans to get married because it's arranged marriage kind of thing.
Okay.
It's, you know.
It's weird.
Yeah.
If it's a hoax, think about, this is something, okay, this is like a whole new chapter of this video. Hoaxes have ROIs. They have cost-benefit equations. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to perpetuate a hoax if the hoax is expensive.
Yeah, or you're...
Right? Like, if it's going to take me 2 years, right, and $3 million, and risk my reputation, especially if I'm a professional, like a doctor or something where my reputation matters, right, mm-hmm. then I'm not going to do the hoax. Who are you going to see do hoaxes? College students, mm-hmm. right? Young entrepreneurs who are still hungry and, you know, like to do VFX stuff on their free time, right?
Mm-hmm. China.
Yeah, China. Well, government disinformation for sure.
Yeah.
But who are you not going to see do hoaxes, right? Like working professionals with reputations on the line, mm-hmm. right? Who don't have a lot of time, who don't have a lot of money. You know, everyone keeps talking about this MH370 video and like how it could be hoaxed. I'm like, you got to realize that you're talking about an intersection between people who have the skills to do that, right? Mm-hmm. But who also have the free time to do that. And that's rare because usually once you cross a certain skill gap, you're a working professional. You don't have time to use those skills on free shit. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand that. And that's a real limit. There are real limits to things. People say that when they debunk and they offer explanations, they say, oh, you could have done this with CGI. Yeah, if you got $10 million to blow, you know, mm-hmm. sure. People don't put that into the equation, though, right? This guy didn't have $10 million to blow. So it's not a hoax, mm-hmm. you know? People don't use that as part of the equation when considering their debunks rationality, and it needs to be part of the equation. Did they have money to do it? With the Nazca Mummies, they went and got a full CT scan with a whole room full of doctors, all taking cell phone videos, right? Mm-hmm. People with their reputations on the line, right? And you have 3D footage, which from a hospital in Mexico, they vetted and they said these bones were not stitched together, right? Mm-hmm. This thing was alive, right? So you've got that. They sent out this evidence to DNA labs for testing, which, as I understand it, is expensive. And how do you, by the way, if you look at the DNA evidence that they offered, it's not like they just sent them DNA strings in a jar, right? Mm-hmm. They sent them tissue samples. They sent them bone samples specifically for 2 of them. And I think one of them was, something else, right? So it might have been fetal tissue. I don't know, because there's like eggs in these things, right? But they sent in tissue samples. So if you've fabricated the DNA, then you had to infuse the DNA into the tissue in some sort of a way that it would be, you know what I mean? Like not obvious that you did that, you know? Mm-hmm. So, and they sent it out to multiple labs, and it's been vetted by multiple labs. So, again, I think the DNA evidence is inconclusive, but the fact that they spent the money to do that means that at least they believe that this is real.
Yeah.
Right?
That they're saying, hey, let's get this, you know, what we have out there.
And then he doubles down. 2017, everyone calls him a hoax and a scam artist, right? Mm-hmm. And then he comes in to Congress 5 years later and says, no, it's actually real. You know, and here's more evidence, right? I mean, if you're hoaxing, why double down like that? in that big of a way when there's no return money-wise. When you've already been called out for being a hoaxer, when your hoax is already online and disbelieved by everybody, right? And you've been made a mockery of, and your reputation's down the hole, right? Why double down?
I mean, people do, double down on just whatever they can sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's histories of it.
Sure, at Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
good example.
I mean, people double down when they've made a claim and they need it to be real, right? But in this case, like, he's got evidence that he's putting on the line. You know what I mean? So he's not like doubling down, hoping that no more information will come to light. He's doubling down, and then he's bringing more evidence to the table. You know what I mean?
Well, I get what you're saying is like, you're not just perpetuating it. Just you're not asking for money. You're not doing anything that's like, hey, by the way, I really could use some money,
Yeah. Well, the point is that there's no promise of return. You know what I mean? Even if he's showing these around and trying to charge money for tickets, which I think I've heard that he did. You know what I mean? It's not like it's making him enough money to cover the DNA evidence cost, especially like, why would you, if you're making money off of them, why would you put forward evidence that's going to potentially contradict that they're real, which affects your income streams? You're spending money to potentially disprove something that you're using to make yourself money, right? It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So if they're fake, or he thinks they're fake, he's not going to send them out for DNA evidence, right?
Yeah. It's the whole Lisa Simpson fallen angel thing, where they did it as a marketing stunt. They just buried the angel, and then they stole it back, and everyone was like, oh my God, it's the end of the times, and they're like, welcome to the new Heavenly Hills Mall.
Yeah. Oh man, there's a mall under the World Trade Center.
They built one?
They built a mall under that thing, and it's so eerie. No, it's not okay,
Just there.
It's fucked up. Don't put a mall there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a tourist attraction.
They want it to be.
I mean, tourists are going to go there, but it's not a place to make a buck. You know what I'm talking about? I hate that they put a mall under there.
How do you
like,
feel?
Whoever thought that was a good idea, fuck that person. You know what I mean?
How do you feel about them doing like the Inca, tourists? Because the big pyramid where they would sacrifice people, how do you feel about that? That they have a tourist area around it?
Yeah, I don't know. That feels different for some reason.
Yeah, right?
I don't know. I feel like it's because it's
human nature, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know why it feels different. I don't know if there's a good rationale. Maybe it's not okay. Yeah, but I just think it's effed up.
I hear you. Yeah.
That and Building 7.
Eye twitches.
So yeah, it's interesting, man. There's a lot of evidence there. A lot of people wrote it off, by the way. Even Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. Really respect George Knapp. He's been there since the beginning. We wouldn't have what we have if it weren't for George Knapp. Even Jeremy Corbell, right? I think Jeremy Corbell
they wrote it off.
Is newer to the scene, and they wrote it off. They wrote off the aliens, right? And they were all, there's this cake video, right, where they made a cake of the mummies, you know what I mean? And then they slice it open, which I think is disrespectful because I kind of think these are real creatures. But I think that they totally wrote it off, and then they, even in the video, they say, of course, we haven't actually reviewed the evidence. Well, so then you're becoming exactly like the secret control group because you're now mocking people who've brought forward evidence. What does that do to suppress information? You've become the people that you hate, right? That you're fighting against, right?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Stop doing that. You know what I mean? Everyone needs to be able to bring forward evidence, and we need to not mock them. Now, we may not think it is strong evidence, right? Or we may not be inclined to believe it because it's so bold. It's a fucking alien body, right? So we step away from it because it's too much, too good to be true, right?
Yeah.
In terms of getting to the truth, right? That sort of too good. Not too good that we have aliens here. but too good that like, you know, the evidence is so strong and so compelling. You know, so they shy away from it, you know, and they don't want to go out on the line and say it's true, because they've fought very hard to only put forward compelling evidence, and I get that, but don't mock it, don't shame it without knowing anything about it. That was wrong, you know.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get that out there, you know, that I think there's some weight behind these mummies, right?
Yeah. Speaking of meteors, we got one of the meteors back. Did you read that? Meteor sample.
Which one is it? The Avi Loeb ones?
I can't remember. It was
those.
The one that we crashed into, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we got the sample of it back.
I don't know. I have trouble caring about that when you've got like UFO ships flying around outside. It's like who the fuck cares, you know?
All right.
You know, I'm sorry, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't even watch SpaceX videos anymore because I'm like, bro, we got anti-gravity ships flying around. You know what I mean? Who gives a fuck? You know what I mean?
No, SpaceX is SpaceX, but yeah.
Yeah. Like, I used to be excited about it, but now it's like, just unlock the actual tech that we have, please. You know what I mean?
Again, whatever secret tech we have, right? You just want to see it. That's what your main thing is, technology.
No. I want to know what reality is. I want to know. I want to start building a new framework for what reality is, so that I can start figuring out where the best place to position myself in that reality is. Right? Because right now I don't know. You know. So I'm completely at the mercy of those in charge, and if they get it wrong, right, then we're all fucked. You know. That's the problem. That's the problem with believing in your government. That's the problem with trusting in, you know, mainstream anything. Sometimes people making decisions get shit wrong, right? And when the entire country is 100% absolutely behind them because they're forced to be, because they're kept in the dark, then 100% of the population gets fucked when that person makes the wrong move, right? Whereas if we're all allowed to think critically about it, and some of us are allowed to take different paths, and you have diverse approaches, if any one of those get it right, then not all of us get fucked. You know what I mean? It's frustrating, man. You know?
Yeah.
It's just frustrating, and just you're so powerless, you know, because what can you do? People are like writing their congressman. One thing I learned from COVID is that writing your congressman they don't fucking care.
No,
you know what I mean? Congressmen do not represent you, right? When you vote for a congressman, you vote for them to vote for their beliefs, and wherever their beliefs don't align with you, they're not going to vote for you, no matter how many of you there are. You know what I mean? Or they vote for their pocketbooks, right? But they don't vote for you, the citizen.
No, that's the main thing, because, you know, we got issues in America, and they're like, nothing we can do about it. Hopes and prayers, you know, kind of thing.
So people are like reaching out to their congressman. I'm like, that's not gonna change things.
No, that doesn't really. It's like mailing Santa. You know, your letter goes where, right? You
need money to fight this. You know what I mean? Like a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of control, then you can bend the world, you know? So like if you're like an Elon Musk type person, if he found out the truth, right? He could bend the world, you know? He could put money in the right pockets and get some information out, right?
Even then, yeah.
But you know, like you and me, we can sit on this podcast and talk all day, you know? It's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it anyway.
But we can eat a burrito.
Yeah, it's true. Beto's. The best burritos.
Actually, I haven't eaten any.
You haven't been to Beto's?
No, I've been to Beto's. It's just I can't eat that much anymore.
If you're in the area, go to Beto's.
One night we were playing video games. And I think it was one of your friends or whoever it was. They're like, hey, let's go to Taco Bell. They got those big burritos. And we just look over and go, you want a big burrito, huh? We know where to go.
You don't know a big burrito. Yeah.
We know where to go.
I went to Chicago and I was like, what, you guys don't have Beto's? And they're like, what's Beto's? You know what I mean? And we got, what's that place that everyone goes to now? They got
Rancheros? Or
no, the one so outside of Utah, they don't have they don't have like these big burrito places. You know what I mean? At least I couldn't in Chicago. I couldn't find one.
Yeah.
They had there's like these chains like where you go in, you get your burrito, they make it on the fly, right? And you get out. I can't remember what the name of this place is called. There's like a dozen of them, but oh man, totally gone. Anyway, they have those places, right?
Uh-huh.
So you go in and you like they ask like, what do you want in your burrito, right? And you make it, and those are decently sized burritos. But I'm like, you guys have no idea, right?
Yeah.
Like this is still a very small burrito.
This is a very tiny burrito.
Yeah. You don't know what a burrito is.
The one time we went out to eat and we're like, hey, let's go to Diego's. We're taking you to Diego's.
Yeah.
Another place, and we're like, hey, it's over here. And you're like, what? We're going to eat at that nasty ass Subway? No. Behind the nasty ass Subway. Right there.
There's this comment I think James Fox made to NASA, right? Which I thought was awesome, right? Like, you know, it's like we haven't identified them, but they're not aliens. You know what I mean? And it's like, what? How can you say what they aren't if you don't know what they are? You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's just. It's such a ridiculous comment. You know what I mean? It can't be this, so that isn't, right? Anyway, just more of like the way that you're not allowed to believe any evidence about aliens unless the evidence by itself is 100% conclusive. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to accumulate evidence, right? 14 eyewitnesses say 14 reputable cross-referenced or whatever, cross-checked eyewitnesses all say they saw the same exact thing. Mass hallucination is you're supposed to believe mass hallucination before you believe that aliens exist. You know what I mean? It's fucking ridiculous. I was looking through Reddit and someone was saying that there was a CIA head that said that everything that Richard Doty says you should believe, something to that effect. You should believe everything that Richard Doty tells you. I want to find the quote and make sure it's genuine, but I think that's interesting, right? Like the more that I'm reading, you know, there's a lot of stuff that he's come out with that seems to be legit. I want to do a lot more, maybe a future topic. Oh, sorry, languages.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about the Majestic documents, Majestic 12, all that interesting stuff.
MJ12, yes.
Yeah.
I know about MJ12, yeah.
See? We'll get into it.
I know about MK Ultra too, but yeah.
Yep. That one's fucked up.
And it was real.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Do what you want with that, right?
Right.
I'm gonna go get Slurpee. That's my way of doing it.
Yeah. We did fucked up shit, man. I don't know.
We always do.
We've been doing it.
Yeah.
So
when ethics go out the window, you know, we can advance more, but we do it in a very bad way.
Yeah. It's fucked up. So I want to talk about languages. I think it's interesting that our first languages, like Sumerian, cuneiform, were pictorial, visual-based, glyph-based languages. Very first written languages. I want to clarify that. And so it's like the movie Arrival. If you look at a language, it kind of tells you a little bit about how the person who came up with the language thinks. And that's why I think it's interesting that our first written languages are visual.
Okay, yeah, cool. That it's more a depiction of what the letter or what it's actually supposed to represent.
It's an image tied to a concept rather than to a sound tied to a concept. So phonemic languages from Phoenician, that are
Phonics.
Yeah. What Phoenicians? Who are the Phoenicians? What's that from? I don't even know.
I don't remember.
A little embarrassed right now. Don't know who the Phoenicians are. You know?
They were there.
But they're important. But phonemics, right? It's sound-based concepts.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Well, it's more important than that. It's the idea that concepts arise from sound. We tie concepts to sounds in our brain, right? Because we're audible speakers. So we've learned, we learn to associate concepts with sounds or sequences of sounds, patterns, right? Whereas a visual communicator, you know, if I'm an octopus and I'm changing like the color of my skin and you're changing the color of your skin and we're sending back and forth visual patterns, right? We would start to formulate visual patterns as concepts. So a visual pattern person would probably have a visual language. I'm going to draw a pattern for you. Because when we talk to each other, right, this visual pattern is similar to what we speak, right?
Yeah.
A simplified version of what I'm sending you visually. So my language is going to be image, 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 because that's the only way I conceptualize the data.
Yeah. And
even though it's not very efficient
it.
in terms of memory use, right? Because I have to have a very large character set, right?
Yes.
But that's the way that I think, right? So that's the way that I write. We don't think that way.
Yeah.
We think in terms of sounds. And so that's important, because why was our first written language visual?
I mean, at the time, like you said, if they were here and they taught us that you go by visual only, you know, it's like, this, you see me, I see you. I'm not speaking. You know, again, if they're the small little floating things, they just float, stand there.
And they send images.
And then they just put the image on the rock. And then we come up and look at them and go, okay, copy it. And then they just kind of do it again. And then we copy them again. And then they look at us and go, we're getting bored. We're out.
Yeah. So that's the thing is, I believe that a visual-based communicator came up with those language, and we're not visual communicators. So that, I mean, subtly, like we have hand gestures, we have, you know, facial expression to a degree, but it's not our primary means of communication, right? So, well, not to the same extent as a telepathic individual, right? So the point is, visual communication is a sort of early form of telepathy. Because you think about it, if I'm sending you light waves, it's not a big stretch to go from sending you lower frequency light waves. And if you learn to perceive those lower frequency light waves, and those go subluminal, like visual field, right? Then you are sending hidden light waves back and forth. It's effectively telepathy, right? Especially if you can find a way to perturb the quantum field with those light waves. Maybe you send higher energy light waves and you're able to perturb the quantum field, right? Quantum, not the quantum field, but like the 0 point field, right? Or like the whatever, right? You know, if you're basically able, like the quantum foam, like if you're able to oscillate that even, right? So telepathy is basically just, you know, non-visual light-based communication, possibly some sort of other quantum entanglement-based communication. But the point is that at least the former, right, is a natural evolution of visual-based communication. And a visual-based communication person is going to write visually. Aliens, in pretty much all lore that you can find, are telepathic, right? Pretty much everything that I can read, that I've read anywhere, says they're telepathic, right? So they're telepathic, then, which again, probably evolves naturally from visual-based communication, then they're going to have visual languages. And even if you talk about the aerial school sighting, there was this aerial school sighting where a bunch of kids were, again, all interviewed, drew pictures of the same thing, of these alien craft that landed outside their school.
Australia, or was it Ireland? I can't remember.
I want to say it was South Africa.
Oh, okay.
But I could be wrong. So, anyway, so they all drew these pictures of aliens, right? Well, they're grown up now, and they're holding to their stories, which I think is very interesting, right? But some of them have given, you know, or at least there's one of the girls was talking, right? In some sort of a forum, and the way that she describes it now as an adult, it's very interesting. She describes just seeing this sort of barrage of images come to her, right? And you know that it's not just her, like all of these kids saw this thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just like one person that's having, like, you know, some sort of an issue, right? Her eyewitness testimony has been corroborated, so she's not lost her mind, right? Like, this is sincere testimony, right? So we know that what she saw because it was corroborated, right?
Yeah.
And the way that, so it's then very interesting to me to hear how she describes the form of communication. And it was just like this barrage, like image. You know what I mean?
And that's
the way she describes it's almost aggressive, you know, like it's being pushed. You know what I mean?
And see, let's go back to the beginning, you know, where they first, ancient man, all that. So they first do that to them, freaks everyone out. So like, okay, we can't communicate that way. Let's, you know, do drawing, see if they pick it up. You know?
No, I don't think, I think they draw. I think that glyphs are their natural written form of language.
Okay.
And and they gave it to us as a way to write.
I don't know. I just have this scenario of where they come, they do that, you know, freaks early man out. Early man doesn't really want to interact.
I think there's a lot of things about them that would freak early man out.
But I mean, it's like, they're like, hey, we need to communicate. You know, we need to get past this boundary.
Yeah, but I feel like they already have the ability to force. Supposedly, they have the ability to make you calm. Even when you're maybe. Again, let's rule that out. Let's say that that's not true. And they're coming to talk to early men. I don't think they're going to take their time and patiently draw images. I think they're just going to push images on you, and you're going to have to deal with it or not. They don't have to like waste their time trying to like make you comfortable. You know what I mean?
You think they're impatient?
I just don't think they give a fuck. You know what I mean?
They don't have a concept of that.
Yeah.
Do you have a concept of, maybe waiting a minute?
Yeah. I don't think they're going to spend 30 years coming up with a written language that they can use to communicate with us. Because we understand the images, whether they freak us out or not. You know what I mean? They're just going to be like, okay, you're going to have to get past this, right? Because this is how we talk. You know what I mean? That is one advantage about visual communication, though, is it is sort of universal, right? Mm-hmm. To a degree. I imagine there are some communication problems where they send us like the picture of like a rat, and like it freaks us the fuck out, but they're like, this means mammal, you know what I mean? Or whatever,
Wait,
know?
What? No.
You could have used any mammal, you know what I mean? You chose a rat.
What was I going to say? You said rat, and all of a sudden I was like, got that scene from Pulp Fiction go through my head for no reason.
All right, yeah.
Anyway, so that's how they communicate. That's how they go about their thing. And we're like, okay, we can understand the kind of concepts you're kind of give us. You're giving us pictures of train, rat, dolphin, two dolphin. Okay. Burger King menu. What?
I do wonder how they do like verbs or like adjectives. You know what I mean? In a visual language. I'm sure that people who read hieroglyphs could answer that question, but I'm really curious about how they, do
shorthand.
Well, how do you like, cause to me, images are nouns, right? They're things. So how do you communicate action or intent or desire or description,
Picture of war, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I guess like you can say like, you can show someone like making bread, but it just seems like, I don't know. It's weird.
The only thing they keep sending is cow.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Cow? Cow. Cow?
Cow. Yeah.
Cow. Burger King menu.
Yeah. Right. They've evolved us to develop Burger King. Like this whole thing has been like developing us to where we could create Burger King.
And then that's all they wanted.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
Well done.
Thank you for your time. We'll be going
now. All right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Bah. What are notes you got?
I got any other notes? I think that's the last note I wanted to talk about on this subject for today.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to stop here for this. I want to do a reading. Got time for a reading?
What reading? Oh, yeah, the Shakespeare.
We're going to do some Shakespeare reading. If you don't have time, it's okay. It's 4:54.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to go? Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
Next week, see what we can do.
Yeah. The Shakespeare. Maybe we should devote one to Shakespeare. We've done enough aliens. You know what I mean? I want to do the Shakespeare reading again. So
okay.
I really wanted to do it this week. So you're kind of making it a problem for me.
I'm just going to put some images of cows in your head. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. Angry face.
Yeah. Cow.
Yeah.
Milkshake.
Oh, milkshake.
That's a new one.
We got to introduce the ETs to milkshakes, dude. I wish ETs were chill ass motherfuckers. They don't seem like it. I just wish they were just like fucking like we could be excited about it, I wish so bad that like when we found out the aliens were real, we could be like, fuck yeah, like new friends, But it's not like that. At least not the ones that are here.
Not the ones that we have.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
They all seem to be dicks. I don't know.
They're all just doing donuts in the sky.
Yeah.
Come around.
Yeah. They're the rich kids, They come and
the rich kid.
Come and throw eggs at you while you're walking to school,
Like I said before, we get visited by an intergalactic civilization, and the ones that we know of, the aliens that have been hovering around bugging us, just go away. They're like, oh yeah, those guys? They're like, flies. Don't worry about them. We got you.
Yeah. Not flies. I don't want to think of them as flies.
But what if they, it's like, they just push them out.
Yeah, I don't know.
Giant.
Part of me still hopes that like maybe we can make friends with them, somehow. But I don't think so. I think they're kind of psychopathic. You know what I mean? I think they're kind of like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like they're non-emotional types. Yeah.
To them, organic is organic. Doesn't matter. Well, they don't know about emotion. They don't know of
love.
Yeah, they don't know love. When will they harness the power of love to power these e-scooters?
Right, yeah. Oh, by the way, if you're in the secret control group, if you could at least let out the hoverboard tech, that would be much. We were supposed to have those in 2015, and
well, COVID happened, so we gotta get behind.
Yeah, if we could get the hoverboards at least, that would be great. Thank you.
That was one of the tech that was always around in like supervillain stuff. Hover tanks,
It's just hoverboards.
They just hover everything.
Yeah.
They're like, we stole a bunch of parts from his tank. Now it's broken, but whatever,
Dude, I think, one more thing. I think airplane wings are actually warp drives.
Okay.
Think about it. Mm-hmm. Airplane wing.
I think you did this last time you talked about it, yeah.
Yeah, it tapers. The wing tapers. The wing tapers. So the air hits the wing, right? And it's got to go over the wing, right? Here's the problem. So you got this air coming this way. Wings going this way like a fist, and you got the air coming this way. So as it goes over the wing, because the wing's tapering, it's naturally moving away from the surface of the wing, right? Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is that I think that both creates a bit of a vacuum, but also, importantly, you have, I believe, a sort of a Casimir slope. Casimir, like the Casimir effect with two plates, and you have this negative energy density in between them. Mm-hmm. But in this case, one of the plates is the surface of the wing, and the other one is the layer of air that's being displaced as the wing moves forward. So that layer of air is getting displaced. Now that's going to create not just a vacuum, I don't think. I think it would actually also create a negative density area. So not just like vacuum of space, but negative, like below 0 point energy, right? Density, just like in between two Casimir plates. So that's going to pull the air back. That's going to accelerate the air, right, back toward the wing. I think that's part of the reason that the air above the wing accelerates, right, is it's being sucked back along the taper of the wing, right? And then in addition to that, the wing is also going to be sucked up a little bit. And now you might think, okay, once the wing gets sucked up, you have a vacuum underneath it, it'll get sucked back down. But no, because the wing's angle of attack means that you have air, as the wing's getting sucked up, you also have air that's already moving, right? To occupy the new space. So there's not a significant pressure delta below the wing and above. So and above, you've then filled in that pressure delta, right? You've pulled the air down, wing up, right? Slightly, as this air accelerates over that. Supposedly, also, you have this bifield Brown effect, which I believe is similar to like a capacitor drive, asymmetrical, where you've got like a positive charge and a negative charge, right? You've got electrons shooting upward, right? Well, supposedly with a wing, if you have any kind of conducting material in the structure of the wing, then what you can, in theory, if you're creating some sort of a charge differential, you might be shooting electrons up the wing, right? As you fly, which would be interesting. It would create sort of like a kind of electrostatic force that's pushing upward on the wing, right? Which is another way that you're getting lift there. And then I think another way that you're getting lift, of course, is just the impact pressure, right, of the air hitting the wing, building up this pressure. So that's just adding to the pressure density. I don't think, because the hair is, even the wings like this, it's hitting it like that. It's not necessarily lifting it up, but it is creating pressure here. High impact pressure. I guess there is upward pressure equal and opposite to gravity to a degree. So you're getting some lift that way because the plane's trying to fall, but that would bring air pressure up. So you have some air pressure coming up, countering gravity. You have air coming in, creating a little bit of a high pressure area. You're going to have this Casimir cavity right on the top, and then you have, as a result, and then you have possibly also this bifield Brown effect, right, pushing the wing up. But importantly, the reason I say it's a warp drive is because you actually are not just going to vacuum where you've displaced the air along the surface of the wing. I think you've actually created a negative energy density there, and you have a positive energy density down here. I think that you are actually literally creating a because I guess the theory would be that the quantum foam, the 0 point field that's throughout the universe is actually sort of space-time itself, right? And so if you go below that, then you've created a negative energy density in space-time. And so as a result, you've created a negative energy density in space-time above the wing, below positive or neutral, and so you've technically warped the wing upward. You've got a warp drive, basically. You know what I mean? Now, in this case, you have to use the atmosphere to create that negative pressure density, right? So it doesn't necessarily work in space unless, what if you made the wing out of some sort of like plasma or something and you rotated it at like a relativistic speed, right? Would the 0 point field itself be enough, right? To create that negative energy density, right?
Again, we don't really have the information that we can go off.
I think airplane wings are warp drives, Adam.
Okay.
Think about that.
Yeah. Well, relative to
physicists
our
will tell you. Well, okay. So when I was studying to be a pilot, and it's funny because you hear that's maybe it was in the last episode. I can't remember if we talked about this or not. Right?
I think we did. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that a little bit more because I thought about it some more.
He's like, I thought about this.
Anyway, physicists and airline industry don't really seem to have their mind fully around why you get the negative pressure density in the air. So they'll tell you that it's the pressure differential that causes the plane to lift, that you have a negative or a reduced pressure density above the wing and a positive pressure density below the wing. What they don't really tell you is why that's happening, right? They say, when I hear the same thing that they were saying, that Scott Manley was saying, which is when I was studying to be a pilot, which is that the air somehow is inclined to meet up with the air going under the wing, right? That's split, it accelerates over the top because it somehow wants to get back to, right, the air that it's been separated from. But that's not actually the case as far as he said, right? I think it's more likely, and then he goes on to say that it probably has something to do with the inclination or the tendency of air to accelerate over a curved surface. Okay, but that still doesn't explain why the air is accelerating over a curved surface. You know what I mean? You're explaining something with something that's not explained, right? And so I think the reason actually is why air tends to accelerate across a tapering surface is because that it's in each time interval as it moves away from that curved surface, it creates a very small Casimir gap, right, between the particle that has moved away from the plane and the plane surface, and that brings both of those together, right? And that gives a little bit of a tug on the particle, accelerating it along that curve, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Peace out.
Later, everyone.